Please watch on a bright screen in 4K quality, preferably on the largest screen you have available for best experience. Remember, you can pause the video to inspect the images. The story of the Soggy pad at Preston New Road begins in February 2017. Pooling water can be seen on the site location as the topsoil is being removed. A perimeter drain is being installed, intended to carry surface water around the outside of the site and out to the local drainage system. An existing water flow was present in this location, which can be seen on the flood maps. The council were aware of this. Ponding water could be seen close to the monitoring boreholes right from the start. As work continued, the water issues were plain to see, with water pooling all over the site, but especially in one big lake. As we take a closer look at the surface, we can see the water is taking the same course it has since probably the last ice age, when a melting glacier formed the landscape. In March, we see the lime substrate going down, and efforts continue to dry up the small lake. At the east corner, water can be seen breaching the site and pooling. Where the lime is being used, pools of water can be seen. Patches of spilled lime can be seen in the areas already smoothed by machinery. In this spot, what looks like a flow of water can be seen on the downhill side of where the liming has started. The pattern of pooling and flowing water across the site matches the flood maps. By the beginning of April, the water has been removed and the site has been limed. However, on the northwest edge, water appears to still be flowing. The overflow for the drainage ditch is being installed, even though the company have no permission to discharge water from the pad and won't apply to do so for many months. Water can be seen pooling in the drainage ditch at the north corner. This ditch runs the perimeter of the pad and is designed to direct liquid into the open storage channel on the northwest edge. There are areas on the perimeter that look questionable even this early on, with signs of pooling around the outside in the natural watercourse. There are also signs of erosion and collapse. This is where the cellar for the well will be built. It looks like something happened to the soil in there. At the end of April, footage reveals the early stages of the cellar construction. And the beginning of the geotextile membrane being laid. The perimeter fence is still being erected. In May now, and much of the membrane has been laid. However, there has been rain since the lime was applied, and this can be seen pooling in the area surrounding the cellar. We are still unsure what happened at the cellar around this time. The northwest edge still shows signs of water issues. A few days later, and the area with pooling water around the cellar has drained, though it is still quite damp. Other issues are still present, but it is difficult to say from these images exactly what they are. The northwest edge is still in a poor state. The membrane around the cellar is full of wrinkles, and the layers are covered with aggregate. There are wrinkles on the seams of the black liner. In reply to a Freedom of Information request regarding the geomembrane, the Construction Quality Assurance Plan for it states that wrinkles should be cut and welded flat if they can't be avoided. It also states that a consultant should inspect the membrane after a large area has been completed for wrinkles. Here we see the membrane has been placed on top of damp clay, which also shows a depression. The same document states that the subgrade should be free from areas softened by high water content or standing water, and also that the geotextile is in continuous contact with the surface on which it is placed without stretching or bridging over undulating topology. Another day and more liner has been placed with wrinkles. And yet another area of pooling water and depressions can be seen exactly on a seam. From this video we can see that as the liner was being completed there are many issues to be seen. In June, large volumes of water were recorded on the pad. More had been tankered away. The cellar was flooded with grey liquid, and the aggregate was puddled with water in several places, including utility trenches some distance from the cellar. This raised concerns, and an article in Drill or Drop reveals that a spokesperson for the company said, "I can confirm there has been no flooding on the site. There was heavy rain for several days recently which did collect in the well cellar and surrounding low area of the site. However, the site has been designed to drain water in the event of such an occurrence, and it is working as per design. However, later Cuadrilla admitted encountering unexpected artesian water just days before these pictures were taken. Artesian water is water that is forced out of the ground under pressure. This Freedom of Information request is still partly outstanding. The membrane is shown in this video as messy and perhaps incomplete around the edges, and green water is present along the exposed ditch. In July, the water issues had not ebbed much. In August, as the main drilling rig is erected, much of the pad was sodden consistently. An ominous flow out of the northwest corner can be seen. Closer inspection of this location shows erosion or collapse close to the perimeter fence line, and water is pooling at the outer fence line. The extent of the water can be seen in this video. We have no idea what was mixed in this liquid. It was in late August when we suspected well fluids were appearing at the base of the rig after rain. We noticed that similar colour sediment could be seen in a wet area on the northwest edge of the pad. The fence line here was also showing signs of water erosion. This was happening exactly where the small lake used to be. It is concerning to think there could be issues with contaminants leaking to ground, given all the chemicals spilled on the pad. This tanker in particular leaked several times between September and December 17, when the liquid was covered over by aggregate. This seems to be the modus operandi for Cuadrilla, as this is what they have done with issues on the pad all along. The water issues persisted throughout September, with the pad remaining waterlogged for long periods. Around the outside of the fence line, areas of collapse could be seen. Holes on the outside correspond to darker areas on the inside of the perimeter ditch membrane. There was some debate about whether these are holes or simply areas of growth. The continued pooling of formation-coloured water in the waste area around the bottom of the rig was still of concern. The waterlogged nature of the pad itself Areas where spillages had previously been noted and other places where signs of potential structural undermining had taken place were all adding up to a bigger concern. This was raised with the Environment Agency on many occasions. Each time we would be reassured that there was no leakage from the membrane and that it was sealed. The egress at this time was helping the vegetation to flourish with extra water. On the morning of October 25, 2017, the pad had water poured all over it. The drainage ditch had overflowed, so the pad was not draining into it and was largely underwater. Martin Walsh of the Environment Agency assured me personally that he had inspected the perimeter of the site on this day, that he found a small trickle of fluid leaking from the pad, and that this was tested and shown to be clean water. When we look at the egress on the northwest side, we can see there is now darker sediment showing. Further along the same edge, more instances of what look like water flows can be seen. Indents on the inside of the ditch are mirrored on the outside bank. The liquid poured inside has an oily film on it. There are gaps between the perimeter fence and the earth outside. It is unclear if the water is flowing in, out, or both but in different places. These sandbags suggest that a flow of water is being prevented. Fluids can be seen pooled around the cellar, and where it had been collecting in the waste area since August at the base of the rig, now covered in membrane to try and hide the fact. The colours indicate this is mixing with other standing fluid. Issues can still be seen on the perimeter fence line and water is pooling on the outer fence. A gap has appeared along the southernmost portion of the southeast edge. We identified this as a water ingress to the subsurface of the membrane, compromising its integrity. I'm sure these flow patterns can be explained scientifically. We fast forward to the dismantling and cleaning of the rig now. Where aggregate has not been added due to equipment in the way, the original surface of the pad can be seen. Flooded. Where vehicles have compacted the ground, the gravel has sunk back to the water level in places. Red sediment is present under the rig, and fluids from the cleaning of equipment are free to run across the pad. The cellar is flooded. Where the pipes were loaded and unloaded during operation, the material is disintegrating. A greens tanker is collecting from the internals of the rig and another day of water from hosing the rig is running across the pad. This was the third month into a drought. Dark fluid with a sheen on it can be seen pooling where the rig used to be next to the disintegrated material. There is debate over what this rectangle is. Aggregate that used to be under the waste area and often submerged was now loaded into Lytham skips. Three days later and the cleanup is still underway. Fluid is still pooling around the cellar in the same location. The wet patches are now being covered up. Just what was happening here? Water is still present. Here we see another area where gravel has not yet been added to the old surface. A couple of days later and the fluid is still pooled on the pad despite the heat wave. The area around the cellar on the northwest facing side looks concerning. The boards and plastic are removed, though it is difficult from these images to see what is underneath, except water. The cellar is still flooded. Cuadrilla then did what they do best and buried the issues. Or did they? Fast forward now to April 19 and the end of fracking. We can see there are residues where the fracking equipment was located. When these boards are removed, evidence of a flow through the location from right to left and a series of different coloured residues and reflections can be seen. So, before we look at the pad in detail for May 2019, we will just recap on a couple of issues. Firstly, there is the northwest edge. This was always a wet field and showed on available flood maps. The position of the water here matches the pattern on the flood map. Even after the pad's subsurface is prepared, water can still be seen flowing at this location. A white substance can be seen after the membrane has been laid. In August, a flow of water can be seen. At the end of August, this turns red in places. In September the colours have darkened and erosion or collapse can be seen at the perimeter fence. In October the situation continues unchanged. However, in November, iridescence can now be seen in the next field. December shows what looks like sediment being pumped up. We're in March now, and it appears that drainage has been dug out. The collapse at the fence has worsened considerably. The water is now finding a new path from that on the flood documents. In May the channel has been filled with aggregate, and while the company would argue that it is to their drainage system, it looks as though it is going into the neighbour's field. The area looked dry during the drought. But this soon changed in October and November. This is how the location looks in May 2019. It has dead areas and discoloration in places. The collapses on the perimeter fence have worsened. Also on the northwest side there is this area that has looked a mess since the very beginning. A scaffold and boards were erected at this location. These have since peeled away from the fence line. Another striking issue that causes alarm is the east corner. From early on, collapse could be seen. This is on the inflow on the flood maps. Even distant images show something amiss. You can clearly see the problem here as the membrane is laid. As the artesian pressure is encountered, the pad is fairly level with the monitoring borehole. It remains fairly level into September 17. though large gaps can be seen on the outside. This would easily let water undermine the membrane. The collapse continues through 2018. In May 19, the area has collapsed. There are wrinkles in the membrane at the corners. Mold is growing and water can easily enter the pad here. We will take a quick look at the cellar now in May 19. It looks like water is present in the aggregate in this area. This is the side that was wet after the rig was removed. A few days later now, and some intriguing mounds have appeared at the edges of the well cellar. Three days later, and it now looks as though holes have appeared in places. There is also a hose that connects the cellar to the silting tanks. Instead of showing every issue around the pad membrane, which is beyond the scope of this video, we will instead take a look at the condition as it is in May 2019. This silver pipe carried flowback from the well. Along the exposed drainage ditch, areas of dark can be seen on the waterline inside. These correspond to collapses on the outside of the perimeter fence. These issues were reported to the Environment Agency many times. However, every time it has been claimed that there are no issues to be concerned over.